Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Munich Re, I want to thank Fasekolda for their kind invitation to participate in this important conference, and a very special greeting to the colleagues of Munich Re in Bogota and to several friends and several familiar faces that I see in the audience. Unless I got it wrong, this is a talk about digitalization in the insurance world, especially applied to life insurance. And what we know about digitalization is that it has really switched around the way in which we live our lives, communicate with others, and work. And what technologies have done in practice is to eliminate any barriers or limits to innovation and to product and service development. And another thing that they've done is to modify the way in which we communicate with our clients. What we know is that these clients are permanently connected. And of course, all of this is having an impact on the insurance industry. And what I would like to get with my talk today would be to share with you the way in which this is having an impact on us as an industry. I think I have 60 minutes. So I will devote 50 of them approximately to my talk, and I will leave 10 to entertain questions from you. And because this is the first talk in the seminar, I thought it would be right to approach it as a sort of a general introduction to the world of digital innovation and its impact on insurance company strategies, focusing again on life insurance companies. And at the request of the organization, we will try to go into some level of detail as to the strategies or initiatives that are more clearly affecting the life insurance world, as could be automatic underwriting or data-based methods. And to begin, I would like to ask you two very simple questions. The first question would be, who of you think that your biggest competitors will be in 2020 or 2025? But as you think about that question, I would like to ask you a second question. How many of you know this cute penguin that we have here on the screen? For those of you that do not recognize it, I would like to talk to you about Song An. Song An has declared itself to be the first online company in applying internet techniques to the insurance world. And by internet techniques, they mean basically completely digital processes, end-to-end digital processes, access to knowledge of the digital customer or client, and utilization of predictive analysis techniques. You may be thinking that you have already heard about this before. Well, you have heard many companies talk about this, but what we know is that they're not doing that well. So what makes Song An special is that they have been successful. And they have been successful because they've been able to sell 1.6 billion insurance policies in 4 years. 1.6 billion insurance policies. And their market cap is $8 billion when the investment has been $1 billion. Why am I bringing up Song An? Because it's a success case in the digitalization of insurance, but also because it's interesting to know who is behind Song An. Behind Song An, we have Alibaba, which, as you all know, is the Asian guru, or, well, the Asian Amazon. I'm sorry, I correct myself. Tencent, which is the Asian guru, and an insurance company called Pengam. So, in other words, the owners of this insurance company are the Asian giants of internet, which master the world of digital searches. In other words, they're the ones that have access to clients and they're aware of their consumption habits. And with this, they can do large-scale data analysis and use them to go directly to consumers and be able to sell their products to them. without transaction costs because their processes are 100% digital, and therefore they're very efficient. So to answer the second question that I asked you, this cute penguin is Tencent's logo. And some of you must be wondering, well, this is Asia, and Asia, unless digitalization changed geography, is still very far away from us. Yes, Asia is still far, far away from us, but Google and Amazon are quite closer. 3 years ago, these press article was asking whether Google and Amazon would get to the point of offering insurance over the internet. Today, we have an answer. Google is already a very active actor in the insurance world. You can see all the investments that they have in the insurance world. Companies, some of them traditional companies, and some new ones like Oscar, which is a 100% digital healthcare company, which is operating in the US market already. So this was a short introduction to try to capture your interest regarding the potential of digitalization that perhaps we had not yet become aware of fully, but it can get to be very powerful. And we may see a very big impact from it. So apart from my brief introduction, this is the agenda that I'm submitting to you today. Some brief definitions, first of all, then try to see how insurance companies are trying to manage everything that we can call the digital wave. Then we will try to very briefly go over the most important technological trends and in what way they are impacting the insurance world. Then we will discuss in more detail, if we can call it a detail level in such a short period of time, the three trends that are affecting our world, which are automatic underwriting, predictive analysis, and wearables. And then we will wrap up trying to have a futuristic view, which is to try to foresee how our industry, our insurance industry, could look like in a few years from now, and some final thoughts, some takeaways of this talk that I want to share with you today. So let's go to the definitions. On the first one, well, let's make a statement here. This is not a talk about technology. Personally, I'm not an expert in technology, and I'm not a technology-intensive user either. This is a business talk, and those of us that are sitting here are individuals that devote ourselves to doing business. So in this context, technology is an enabler of business. And that's why the first definition out of the two that I want to share with you is so important. What do we mean by digitalization in our context? To us, according to the Gardner Institute, which is a very well-renowned institute that is devoted to studying digitalization in the business world, digitalization is the creation of a business model in the digital world. Is the creation of a business model in the digital world. In other words, how can I use technology to generate or to make a difference, and to get this difference to get me revenues and profit and returns for my company? That's what we're talking about. Not technology, but technology as an enabling factor for business. And the second one was mentioned by Carlos, the millennials. It is very easy to illustrate who the millennials are. For instance, I am not a millennial. Unfortunately, that is very evident in spite of the makeup that we can put on us. Millennials is the generation of those that were born between 1980 and 2000 and that grew up with technology around them. They're part of technology. They live technology. So what's the relevant piece of data here? In 2030, that is to say 13 years from now, 13 years from now, 75% of the world's labor force will be made up by millennials. 75%. of the purchasing power around the world will be made up by millennials. Today, 60% of the people working for businesses and companies in Colombia are already millennials. So if we don't brace ourselves to have an answer to what they want, well, you can come to your own conclusions. So let's move now to the third topic. And we have called it Surfing the Wave of Digital Insurance. How do we get ourselves ready so that this wave, and here we have a good analogy that may be very big, even bigger than we can see on this picture, will not roll over us? Because if it rolls over us, surfacing again and being able to breathe again will be very difficult. So the first thing is, let's identify the 4 fundamental things that this wave is bringing upon us. This wave is bringing well, the spread of digital devices, which are just part of our daily life, the possibility to manage humongous amount of data, process them, manage them, and do something with them. Because again, the idea here is to do something with technology, with data, or with whatever we have at our hand, to get some of that, to make it tangible. And there's a fundamental change in the way we are relating to our clients, a fundamental change. We're having a permanent exchange of information with our clients that is allowing them to live insurance in a different form. And this, there's no question, is affecting the personal insurance and life insurance in general. That is something that we have to look at. And then let's look at Songyang. New competitors are entering the industry. It's not that we have more competitors, companies A, B, C, or D, that used to be very similar between themselves. The new ones are completely different, these new competitors. And if we do not become aware of them soon, our reaction capability or capacity will be very poor, very bad. And this is a fundamental characteristic of disruptive innovation. Whenever a disruptive innovation happens, the existing players in the market disappear. If we had more time, we could speak of cases that have already occurred through history in all industries. Okay, so companies get ready for that by doing several things. Let me talk to you about what Munich Re does, because this is what I know. But I'm sure, in fact, I know for certain that our competitors, other reinsurers, multinational companies, are already developing the same tools and the same initiatives, precisely to be ready for facing this digital wave. So basically, what companies do is to put sensors out there. We are not technological companies, but we know that it seems to be a good idea to know what is happening in the technological world, because that might drastically impact us, if we want to use that word. Therefore, we have to put sensors out there. How can we do that? Well, the first thing, by generating an ecosystem, if we could call it that. Ecosystem is a word that is very related to today's world also. An ecosystem or a digital infrastructure. And how can we do that? By participating in innovation labs, cooperating with universities and research centers. This can also be done by sending people, for instance, we call them the Inno Scouts, to participate in the world's innovation centers, the best known of them being the Silicon Valley. So there are people, individuals from the insurance world that are already in the technological innovation centers, just seeing what is happening there. This is a disruptive change in the way in which the insurance world used to approach technology. And also, not only by being good observers, which is okay, and understanding what is going on around us, but also by becoming active players, active participants. Let me give you an example. As Munich Re, well, let me use this example of our company. We're very proud of our technological startup accelerator called Mundi Lab. And it's its second issue. It's a technological startup accelerator devised for Latin America and the Iberian Peninsula. It concentrates on those markets specifically. But what does an accelerator do? Well, what we do is we receive technological companies that approaches. We've seen more than 600 of them, and we analyze whether these companies may have a technology or something that we can use for the value chain of life insurance. And that technology that we would be including in the life insurance value chain could be given to our clients so that by incorporating this in their value chain, these clients may get a relevant advantage or competitive advantage in their activities with their clients. And of course, as I said before, well, this is not a talk about digital innovation in Munich Re. We are not the only ones doing this. All the large multinationals are doing this too. And I apologize for this. Perhaps the font is too small. But on the right-hand side, that is to say, your left, you have the activity of Munich Re and Swiss Re in their work with the technological startups, acquisition of companies, and participating in accelerator initiatives, etc. It's a very intense activity. But if you want to take away, hear this. In 2015, we don't have data for 2016, but only in the United States and this year, $33 billion were invested on the acquisition of technological startups by the insurance sector. And just forget that this is only something that is happening in the US or in Europe. It is happening also in Latin America, and it is actually happening in Colombia. You have the radar here in Syntech, the technological dimension associated to finance. We also have Insurtech for insurance in Colombia. All these are startups that are working in financial developments, technological developments associated to finance or insurance. And each one of these technological startups could have something that could change the way in which you are presenting to the market. So let's go quickly, so that I don't run out of time, to the fourth part of my conference, which is just a brief look at what is happening in the digital world. Just a brief look at it. Just a glance. And it's just a glance that will give us some information about how this is related to insurance. So I will be basing myself on this work carried out by Munich Re, the Radar of Technological Innovation, and what it does, basically. And I'm lagging behind here in my slides. I'm falling behind in my script. But what it does is that it identifies technologies and it assesses its potential impact in our industry, the industry of insurance. And what this report tells us, sorry about this, I don't know if you can see it, but I'll try to explain that to you anyway. Well, what this shows is that there are 4 major fields, if we can call them that are having an impact on us, technological fields that are having an impact on insurance. These fields are what we call the user-centric world, that is to say the user as the center. And around this concept of user-centric, what we have is that today's consumer wants products specifically designed for him or her that will respond precisely to his/her needs, and that will also, if they have any element that does not really adapt to those needs, will generate a consumer experience that will be rated as very poor and therefore will affect the reputation and the brand of the supplier. This is a user-centric world, having the user as the center of the world, and around them, many different technologies being developed. that I hope you can see. I think that this screen over here looks better than this one. You can switch sides if you want. But some of them, for instance, are augmented reality, for instance. Sometimes you can experience something without necessarily using that specific thing. For instance, you can put on a dress, for instance, without really having to wear it on you. In addition to this is already existing today in stores in the United States, or stores like Zara. You can actually see how that dress will look at you. And payment methods, this has greatly developed. One of our big problems is collecting the premiums, especially if they're small. So there are big developments there. For insurance, shared economies on this pillar of having the user as the center of the world, if you want to call it that way. Then the second dimension, so that we can move forward, is the Internet of Things. We have all heard of the Internet of Things. We define it as all those devices and digital connections that are continuously sharing and exchanging information and processing it and generating new solutions and new propositions on the basis of all that. In these fields of the Internet of Things, we can mention, especially from the non-life sector, because we'll be looking at the life, especially through the wearables. We can look at telematics in the auto insurance or drones from the point of view of risk inspection. Then artificial intelligence would be the third major pillar, where we have a whole set of subtrends where a lot of work is being done. Artificial intelligence, this is very much present in our lives, even though we may not be aware of it. We all know that in many cases, robots are replacing individuals and human beings in plants and in factories. But the impact of artificial intelligence on our lives is becoming increasingly evident, and everything tends to point that this will only speed up. Then self-driven cars, well, this is an example of artificial intelligence, for instance. In fact, artificial intelligence is a fundamental element in predictive analytics. Perhaps out of intuition, we say predictive analysis has more to do with the use of data, but actually it is anchored on artificial intelligence, and we will be discussing this later. And the era of data, the data era, this is the fourth field. The user as the center of the world was the first one. The user is king and elevated to the end power. This is the definition of this field. Then the second one, the Internet of Things. The third one, artificial intelligence. And the fourth one, data era. And the analogy that I have here for you, and I think I'm running out of time? No. Well, the data era. I was saying that this is the fourth field, and the analogy is very clear. I don't know where I read it. This is not mine. It comes from someone that was perhaps much more intelligent, and it says data are like oil. Data is the new oil. We bring it to surface, extract it, refine it, sell it, and with that, we generate value. It's exactly the same. I will not explain why our era is the data era. You know that very well. So let's go now to some more details about, I don't know how to define these 3 points, the 3 consequences, let's say, of using all these new devices and technologies that we have been referring to. You know, technology regarding clients' behavior and how we approach them, how that has changed, and how this is sort of reflected on 3 business strategies, perhaps initiatives. I don't know what word to use. These 3 initiatives that we see here in the life insurance field are automatic underwriting, what we call predictive analytics, and there are people that call it big data too. I don't have enough expertise to tell you what the differences are, specific differences are between these 2. I just throw everything in the same thing, even though if we had an expert, perhaps we could hear from her or her, from him or her, what those differences are. Data mining is part of all this, but we call it simply predictive analytics. And then the third one, that I would like to mention to you very quickly is the one related to wearables, wearable devices in our jargon.
So let's consider now automatic underwriting. I don't know what you understand by automatic underwriting. In my case, it is my understanding that this is the automated procedure for risk underwriting for life insurance with no intervention of human agents. Humans don't intervene. Through questions and answers. And usually, this takes place at the point of sale. When that occurs at the point of sale, it's particularly effective in terms of its advantages. Which are the reasons, and let me explain them to you. Which are the reasons behind using this automatic underwriting offered by companies using this methodology? Well, the reasons are hygienic from a Maslow point of view, for instance, to make their processes more effective, more efficient, or it's not just improving efficiency, but also making them more consistent. The machine doesn't have any moods. The human being is moody. Therefore, the machine, in 100% of the cases, will underwrite the same case in the same way, whilst humans may do it differently. This is a fact, and this is a reason to use automatic underwriting. And the third case, which personally I think is the one that strategically leads us to a more interesting position from the viewpoint of business development, is the possibility to generate advantages, to create advantages for the existing channels or the new channels. It's simply, if I am developing a product to be sold through my web page, and it can include automatic underwriting online, in that app, in that solution, I am moving one step forward to make the process more speedy, more effective, and of course, to be able to sell more. Footnote. If somebody thinks that automatic underwriting is the future, let me tell you that you are totally wrong. I don't mean to be rude or provocative and say that automatic underwriting is the past. But we have predictive underwriting, but that's not the future. It can be the present. 60% of companies in Australia in 2012, no, not 60% of the companies, but 60% of the underwritings in Australia in 2012 were done automatically in 2012. Munich Re has been working for 15 years with automatic underwriting in the Spanish market. And they underwrite approximately 65 to 70% of the companies present in that market since 2012 approximately. So it's not the future, it's the present. For underwriters that don't like what I am saying, let me tell you which are the key elements in automatic underwriting. Of course, it is not designed for every case. There will always be human intervention in a certain number of cases, maybe because of a complex situation or the amount insured. Our empirical evidence says that that can be up to 15%. But what it is designed for? Well, for cases that don't have any aggravation of risk, for cases that require questionnaires, maybe because of risky activities or an additional consultation on a medical condition, and they can also solve cases that require medical tests, maybe not that complex, simple medical tests. In those cases, we can use automatic underwriting. One of the topics of our lecture is digital and technology, but since I don't rely on technology, I don't want to make an online presentation. because usually it takes longer. So I just brought 2 or 3 cases just to illustrate what it is, because maybe some of you are experts, but others are new to this topic. Since the letter is too small, the writing is too small, and I have to wear other glasses in order to be able to read the slide. I'm not joking. But let me tell you about it. Well, I can't read either, so. Okay, let me give you 2 examples. One of them has to do with a risky activity, in this case, scuba diving, and the second case is diabetes. What happens if we are underwriting an individual that says that they do scuba diving? What's usual is that we give them a questionnaire to fill. We send the questionnaire, we forward the questionnaire to the central office. A human underwriter reviews it, and it takes about 3 days. If the same person states that they practice scuba diving in an automatic underwriting system, what we ask them is basically, what type of scuba diving do you do? Because it's different to do scuba diving in caverns or recreational. So when the individual says that they frequently do scuba diving with nitrox, so we ask, do you have a license? If they say yes, we then ask whether they go beyond 40 meters. If it's less than 40 meters, we can underwrite. Well, this is the procedure that an automatic underwriter will do at the point of sale, face-to-face with the client instantly. Another example has to do with diabetes. When somebody says that he or she is a diabetic, we start asking questions intended to establish the severity of the disease. And that's why we ask, for instance, for amputations. Have you undergone an amputation? If the answer is no, that there have been no amputations or myocardial infarction, etc., another question pops up. And these are all the questions, but they only pop up if needed, on as needed basis. We may not need them because we have enough information. Well, the person doesn't have any renal condition or paralysis, so we say, very well, what type of diabetes do you have? Well, I am a diabetic type 2, non-insulin dependent. If you, the underwriters and life insurance agents, know that usually diabetics have to take analysis and tests, and which are the results of those tests, and all of that follows certain parameters. Did you take these tests 5 years ago? Yes. So that allows us to underwrite that particular individual. I don't want to extend myself on these examples because this is endless. But what's interesting is that this is online with no human underwriter or agent, and we have an automated response. I have 17 more minutes to go. Okay, the data captured can be printed, and obviously all of these can be done very simply. And what we get after completing the process is a risk assessment, what a human underwriter does. No more and no less. For each one of the conditions identified, we give them a rating, and finally we make a decision of whether to accept or reject. So this is automatic underwriting, and it is extremely simple. The result is extremely simple, but obviously to reach that simple result, there is a certain level of complexity, and that makes it very interesting. Now, which are the 3 enablers of automatic underwriting? Well, we need a software, of course, which basically manages all the questions, reflexive questions we ask based on the answers given by the client. Then we have the rules designer. How are the questions? What's the order of those questions? What the level of complexity? The rule designer has to be very friendly, because there are rules designers that need the intervention of the IT people. And the answer is always the same. You have to queue up because there are many other priorities. So that rules designer is a key element for any system of automatic underwriting. And the third factor are the rules. What's the rating for this answer? And the rule is very simple. It's a handbook. It's a manual of the reinsurance agent, transferred to a digital base and enriched with the experience of underwriting millions of cases constantly. So these are the enablers of an automatic underwriting system. And then each company uses it as they want. And to me, this is the big advantage of automatic underwriting, because it's no longer static. We no longer have a health questionnaire, which is applicable to all, one size fits all. We can design a matrix of questionnaires, and that matrix says, well, is this an agent, or is this digital, or is it massive? And how about products? Is this a simple or a complex product? And based on that matrix, I can ask one question, the insured amount is low, or deploy the complete questionnaire. And that gives me power vis-a-vis the consumer. The consumer wants an offering tailor-made for him or for her. Otherwise, they wouldn't like it. From the technological point of view, and let me finish with automatic underwriting, this can be, as we have been doing in the company servers, or what is becoming more frequent in the cloud in a software format. Software as a service. Another advantage of automatic underwriting is that you can plug in elements to enrich that subscription. For instance, while we underwrite somebody, we can connect to databases in the United States, usually for the use of drugs, for instance. So maybe we don't have to ask that individual if he has high cholesterol levels, because if the person is using Lipitor, we already know the answer. So those questions are automatically deleted from the questionnaire, and a 10 questions questionnaire becomes a 3 questions or 33 questions when we need to ask further questions. For instance, databases from traffic fines, lifestyle, etc. As I said initially, automatic underwriting is not the future, it's the present. This is a sample of companies around the world that are working in automatic underwriting with us. And the truth is that this slide has to do with something that makes us feel extremely proud. We have automatic underwriting, not just in all the countries you see here, but we already have automatic underwriting in Latin America. These are not projects. This is a reality. Companies that are doing automatic underwriting, as I just described, in Peru, Brazil, and Argentina. Therefore, this is something that is already happening. I have 12 more minutes before I finish. So let me address the predictive analytics. This is the second initiative or large strategy or initiative that is fundamentally having an impact on life insurance activities. As you heard initially, I am not a mathematician or a statistician. I am an economist, and barely so. So I cannot talk too much about calculations or the statistical background. What I want to share with you is what's the meaning of this from a business point of view and in practice. How do we do predictive analytics in practice? And what we can do with predictive analytics is basically to predict future results, what will happen in the future. But we can also predict behavior and even trends. This is something like the lottery, but basically we have to believe in science in order to make headway. It is used to predict, but how do we predict? How do we do predictive analytics? Well, predictive analysis is a combination of 3 factors, and I hope that you can read it. Methods, and when we say methods, these are regression models or machine learning, which I will discuss in more detail later on because this is the core of predictive analytics, and that's artificial intelligence. Technology, the ability to manage all that data, and the specific software designed with that purpose. And obviously, data. But curiously enough, predictive analytics is something more. It's the cornerstone of artificial intelligence. It's more important in artificial intelligence than in the era of data. That's what the experts of Munich Re say. And this is not simple, as you can see, because it's a mixture of things. And that's something else I want to share with you. This is not simple. It's very complex. So plug-and-play solutions, if somebody offers them to you, just investigate further, because it's complex. And it's so complex that just as we had an infrastructure to understand the world of technology affecting insurance, for data analytics, the developers of Munich Re have their own lake. And why do they have a lake, as you can see on the slide? I don't know. They have their own lake, and they sail together with data scientists, data engineers, and also business people navigate on that lake. And this is very important. This is not just science. We must have the participation of business people, and let me tell you why. But as I said before, what I intend to illustrate at this point is that predictive analysis is a complex and ongoing process, and therefore demands predisposition, infrastructure for developing that infrastructure, and partners, of course, that share their knowledge as well. So let me move on. I don't know whether I was given 50 minutes or 45. 45? 50. Okay, so I have 7 more minutes to go. Predictive analytics has 4 large phases. Processing and validation of data, what we have called machine learning, the discussion of results from a business perspective, and the design implementation of the campaign. Because I repeat, this is not theoretical, this is practical. We do it to sell more. Therefore, in the end, there has to be a deliverable, which are policies, and if they are profitable, even better. The first step, data collection. I want to dwell on that data collection, and if possible, to enrich that data. If you as insurance companies don't have any data, you are in big trouble. And if you cannot process the data, you are also in big trouble. All the experiences we have developed in the world are based on the fact that the company has critical information for what they want to do. And that data, it's very difficult to be contributed by the reinsurance because they belong to the customer, the experience of the customer, their market, etc. The second point, machine learning. Fortunately for you, I am not an expert, therefore I will be very brief. But machine learning, which is the second fundamental phase in any predictive analytics campaign, that means that we are going to use artificial intelligence provided by the computer so that you can learn from the data being analyzed with no human intervention. As it happened in Terminator, the computer learns on its own. That's why it's called machine learning, the machine that learns. So the machine learns from its own conclusions with no human programming. In this process, the machine, the software, reaches conclusions and establishes results. For instance, it concludes the client that bought these will also buy these. This is what Amazon has been doing for many years. And this process provides the individual probability of somebody buying a certain product, which is this particular case. So what we do is that through this machine learning process, we gather information on the characteristics of the buyers versus the non-buyers, and from that interaction and from that procedure, the machine extracts more accurate conclusions of the likelihood of something happening and allocates each individual a different nodes, and those nodes are rated with a purchasing probability. That's the process behind predictive analytics. And if we include a business analysis and target it specifically and run it, the model perfects itself until, in the end, the result is the distribution of traits or characteristics of individuals based on a core value. So we can establish the probabilities of somebody buying more than another one in terms of where they live, their gender, and multiple socioeconomic factors. So the third point, as I said before, has to do with the dialogue between the business people and the data scientists. And the fourth step is action and implementation. For instance, we have developed a campaign in Peru, a predictive analytics campaign. And basically what the company said is that they wanted to do away with the underwriting process and use socioeconomic variables to predict the underwriting results without underwriting the individual. So in practice, without screening or selecting. Here we have an advantage because we have data. The company had measured all the underwriting results and they were cross-matched with socioeconomic variables, and an algorithm was developed. And the algorithm established those that would have had a satisfactory result without selecting them. That campaign is in place, and it is being extremely successful because it's less aggressive to the client, because it avoids answering a questionnaire or going through a process. We have developed additional campaigns in Mexico and in Argentina. And the last trend has to do with the Internet of Things. These are the wearables. And this responds basically to the question, how can we change the way in which we relate to our clients? And the answer is by making them participants in their insurance. So what some companies around the world are doing is using three tools, three evidences, which are to encourage clients to change their lifestyle and make it healthier. That's what we call engagement. Make them part of something. Engage them in the insurance process. The insurance is no longer passive. The client participates in the process. We use the existing devices to collect information and process the data These are the technological enablers, the handrests, watches, everything you can think about. So we make the client participate, we make them participate, and then we use empirical evidence. Empirical evidence means that people that take care of themselves have longer life expectancies. An example, and this is taken from the German mortality tables, a 30-year-old male can save 50 euros a year with their insurance. If we can measure the activity of the individual and determine that they lead a healthy life, we can offer them discounts, but not as a marketing campaign, but based on science. The good thing about this is that what we get with wearables is to get the client involved, to measure their health condition, their lifestyle, how many hours of sleep they usually have. And it's a virtuous circle because it connects directly with what we just saw, data capturing, to make analysis and generate proposals for the client. So this is a virtuous circle that it's interconnected, and there are multiple companies in the world developing this concept. We have helped some of them. This is a case in Spain. This is something already happening. This is not the future, this is the present, and this has been going on for many years. The three basic trends in life insurance associated to technological innovation are wearables, data analytics, and the other one, which I forgot, the automatic underwriting. So what's next? Let me tell you in a couple of minutes how Munich Re envisages the insurance business in the next few years. And maybe you have worked in the world of insurance in a linear way. The individual clients related to the insurance companies were related to the reinsurance, and that was stable for many, many years. What Munich Re thinks will happen in the next few years, it's a more complex situation. What you will see is that together with the traditional insurance companies, there are hybrid companies, which are those companies that are developing digital strategies, many of them for their back end to improve efficiency, others for the front end to relate differently to customers or clients. And from the viewpoint of intermediaries, we have aggregators or automated auctioning platforms. And on the sides, we get other players as well. We have the verticals. The verticals are solutions that impact specifically one part of the value chain. There is a company in the US which is called Genefit, and it offers companies a software to manage the employee forms, everything that has to do with the payroll, for instance. And through that, they capture information to manage and offer health insurance. So they offer something for free, and their source of income has to do with the insurance world. That is vertical. We also have the horizontal platforms, and also the social platforms that are connecting consumers and making them part of the value chain. Let me finish with a summary. The old times are no longer present. The complexity is increasing, and we are constantly witnessing the emergence of new digital competitors. We believe that the existing model is still valid. We don't have to be pessimistic. and it generates our current revenues. But the question is, will that be valid for a long time? Maybe that's the question we have to answer. There are no signs that digitalization will stop. On the contrary. But remember that digitalization is not using an app. Digitalization means creating a business model which is digitally based. It seems evident, as far as I have told you, that it's impossible to act in every area of digitalization. Therefore, what seems reasonable is to choose carefully what you are going to do. And whatever we choose, we have to implement it properly and thoroughly. The client of the future will be a hybrid, and there will be a need to develop strategies for that client to be closer to them from the analogous and digital world. And don't fool yourselves. Digitalization of insurance is already present in Latin America and in Colombia. Basically, as I said before, in the areas of automatic underwriting, wearables, and analytics. I hope that you have found this presentation interesting. You have been very kind in listening to me, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much.
Well, those of you that have questions, please raise your hands, and a mic will be given to you so that you can speak into the mic for the question. Arturo, very good presentation. Thank you very much. More than a question, I would like to hear your views about this. When you talked about automatic underwriting, the experience that I've had is that individual life penetration, penetration in general for life insurance throughout Latin America is not too high. Comparing it against markets such as Australia, perhaps the UK, the United States, even though in the United States it is somewhat shrinking now, but it's not the same kind of penetration. So this automatic underwriting tool, my question is, what comes first, the egg or the chicken? So there are companies that want to start to develop these automatic underwriting, but it so happens that the country or the penetration in these insurance, like Colombia, individual life insurance is not as important as group life. And this tool for automatic underwriting is costly if you want to implement it properly. Because if you're going to underwrite small policy, insurance policy, insurance, you wouldn't need an automatic underwriting, but a knockout system. You either decline or accept. But if you're thinking of bigger policies, you would use this tool. Now, to implement it properly in a company, throughout its systems and going to the right segment, well, implies a certain cost. So that's what I'm asking. What comes first, the egg or the chicken? Perhaps we still don't have a channel for that. Of course, there's a segment for it, as is the case of all countries, but perhaps we haven't tackled it fully yet. So what's your view? Because I have seen how many companies want to start doing these automatic underwriting, but the investments are large to do it. And for this tool to work, you really have to have an important portfolio for that. So I don't know if I'm making myself clear. What's your view in order to successfully implement this automatic underwriting? Well, what you're saying is the reality of Munich Re. Dominique is a very good friend of ours, and she represents RGA in Latin America. And, well, RGA is a very harsh competitor. However, we're very good friends. But the reality that she will offer is exactly the same reality that we face. And I will say, Dominique, that, what we have seen is that originally automatic underwriting systems were developed for the developed markets like North America, Europe, Australia, etc., South Africa, and they required large investments, which made them out of reach for markets like ours, perhaps. So perhaps this has led to a migration of these solutions that were basically in the servers of the different companies and that required costly and long-lasting implementations, moving to solutions which, as I said, plug-and-play software. There's basically a solution in the cloud, and companies can adhere or join that solution so that both implementation and utilization is very low cost. So now, this is a solution that has been provided by the sector that produces automatic underwriting for the type of problems that you're facing. However, or on the other hand, I think that we're looking at two different elements here. On the one hand, companies, as with anything else, have to have a strategic decision to go for it. What comes first, the egg or the chicken? I personally believe that here we have a strategic decision to make and to think that this will really make a difference in your value proposition for your clients. It may be for individual distribution networks or for whatever it may be, for your digital platform, etc. And on the other hand, we have to think that an automatic underwriting tool, for instance, in a mass market, may help change the shape or the form itself of that mass market. What am I talking about? For us, for instance, for me, intuitively, for me, a mass market means, of course, multiple policies, but the insured amounts are quite small. So for us, that's a mass market. So if you look at it, there's an element here, a reason that does not appear explicitly, only implicitly, because we want automatic processes in these mass distributors. We have to make them very efficient, and we have to make them, and we do by eliminating underwriting and giving low insured sums. But if that mass distributor can keep this system through automatic system, and on top of that, we can increase the covered amount, we are really changing in which we deal with that channel. Then the efficiency ratio disappears because the process continues being efficient, but yet we can increase the amount of each policy that we're selling through them. So there are some analyses that some companies are working on, and that's why they're becoming more open to including this automatic underwriting in their processes. I don't know if I answered your question. Okay, so it seems that we don't have any more questions. Thank you very much.